But when it gets pulled on and the lizard feels that pull, it will do a little twist of its body or a twist of the tail, and it peels that off. I almost think of it like when you have a carrot and you grab either end of the carrot and you pull really hard, you're not going to snap it probably. But if you bend it a little bit, you start to create a fracture there. Welcome to 10-Minute Tuesday here on Animals, Nature, and You. And I'm going to just start off right now, right away, saying I'm sorry. if this episode comes across a little rough around the edges, if I slur my words, it's because I'm a little sleep deprived. If you're watching on YouTube, you can definitely see it on my face. I'm sure of that. For whatever reason, my co-producer decided that I should be up at 3:30 this morning. And my co-producer, just in case you don't know, is my cat. So, yeah, he sometimes does that, where he gets me up very early. Usually he settles back down. I can get back to sleep. But today, for whatever reason, once he had me up and awake, my brain was like, well, since we're up and you have so much to do this week, let's start thinking about all the things you need to get done, all the emails you need to reply to. So, yeah. So, although, yes, I have my coffee, I'm a little tired. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's move on, though. Last week, the episode before this one, I interviewed Dr. Erin McGee. She is the starter of Find That Lizard. She's got this PhD in lizard studies. We talked about her journey, her path, finding that lizard, her whole experience in doing all this work. We didn't get too much into adaptations of lizards. And I thought, well, it's kind of fun to dig around a little bit, since I used to do a lot of wildlife education and get these great questions from kids. I remember some cool facts. Specifically, I want to talk about lizards losing their tail. Now, not all lizard species can lose or drop their tail when they're being preyed upon by a predator. Those that can, they cannot just be running along, seeing the predator chasing them and decide, I've got to lose my tail. Hopefully that'll make it chase the tail and I can go hide, which is kind of how it works. When the tail does come off, a lot of electrical impulses go through the nerves there, make the muscles twitch, and it shakes and rattles and twists, and the lizard can dive underneath something and hide, while the predator's like, ooh, I caught it, because the tail is moving as if it was a caught prey item. Great, cool adaptation for survival. The challenge, though, for lizards, of course, you don't want to lose your tail if you don't have to, because it's fat storage, it's a balance, it's part of your display. There's so many things they use their tail for that to lose it is a risk. However, if you can lose your tail and not get caught by the predator that has grabbed your tail, you get to live and see another day. Then, yes, you have to spend a lot of energy regrowing the tail. So what happens exactly with this tail? How does the tail get disconnected from the body? And then why doesn't the lizard bleed out? So, well, let me first say this. I am a wildlife educator. I'm not a herpetologist. I am not a scientist who's done all these studies on lizards and their tails. My role on this planet has always been to work with these animals and share what I know and love about them with people. All the years of wildlife education, I get these great questions that force me to do more research, to look at more documentation, to find the herpetologists, to find the specialists and ask them those questions, and to make it so we, on the other side of science, can better understand what's going on in our natural world. The information I'm sharing with you today is the best that I know. If you are a specialist and you know more than this, or I'm like, no, Rick, you're citing information that's old, this is what we know now, please let me know. I would love to find out. That being said, if you want to find out more information, I do have some links I'll be putting in the show notes of where I'm getting my information, so you can look into it further yourself and see a little more of the science, because I'm kind of not diving super deep into this today. Anyhow, back to the lizards and their tails. So they jump around, they climb around, they chase each other, they climb rocks, they do all sorts of stuff, and the tail doesn't fall off. When I first started doing wildlife education, the documentation that was out there stated that there's bands of muscles along the tail that allow them, that once the tail is caught by the the predator, they can squeeze that tail muscle and it helps loosen it, and so it can snap off. And those squeezed muscles then prevent it from bleeding out as well. So that's what we had probably 15, 20 years ago with information. More research has been done. It ends up there are a series of fractures already in place along the vertebrae of the tail. So think of the vertebrae as your backbone. The tail is a continuation of that vertebrae, series of small bones going all the way down, getting smaller and smaller and smaller as it goes to the end. Covered in muscle, covered in all sorts of tissue, then the skin and the scales also. There are a series of fractures there. So depending upon where the predator, I'll use like let's say a fox, slaps its paw down on the tail of a lizard. The tail doesn't just have a muscle contraction happen and it can break free. There's also now what they know is that at every fracture point, there's a series of muscles that have what they call a pocket and socket that allows them to stay attached really well. But when it gets pulled on and the lizard feels that pull, it will do a little twist of its body or a twist of the tail, and it peels that off. I almost think of it like when you have a carrot and you grab either end of the carrot and you pull really hard, you're not going to snap it probably. But if you bend it a little bit, you start to create a fracture there. In the slow motion video, that's one of the links I have in this in the show notes. It shows either the lizard does a full body twist, depending on the species, or it just does a wiggle of its hips, which then loosens that tail so it peels it apart. Like they reference a sticker. It's like peeling off a sticker. That's pretty fascinating. And it happens then at that fracture point, whatever's closest to where the pressure from the tail. That's an important note there, because when the tail does grow back. Wow. See, here's the rough part I was telling you about the tiredness. When the tail does grow back, what grows from that fracture point is not new bones. They don't grow new vertebrae and new nerves and all that part of it. It is cartilage that is then surrounded with some muscle and some other tissue, which allows them to store fat and energy there, use it for balance. It's not quite as useful as it was, not as flexible, this new tail, as it's grown out. And what's interesting about that fact then is other scientists, another link that I have in the show notes here, is they're looking at the growth plates, the points that are stimulated by the break that then grow out this new tail. Because of the damage that happens to not spinal cord, it's a series of nerves at the end of the spinal cord. That's what stimulates it. So there are lizards out there with 2 tails or 3 tails, because sometimes as it's growing, it might get damaged or hit again, but not break off. And so it stimulates another growth. So there are lizards out there, the scientists have found, more than they expected even, lizards with more than 1 tail as the multiple growth points come off that break. That's pretty interesting. So then what happens if, let's say it's got a nice smooth cartilage tail, predator comes along, slaps it, and the lizard's like, I want to live. So it breaks at the next break point up, not somewhere, even if it's just the last part of the cartilage tail, that can't break off anymore in the same way that the other tail did at the growth point, at the fracture point, where those muscles, pockets and sockets are, plugs and sockets, excuse me. So it's interesting that they can also regrow. One of the papers I was reading was talking about how many times can they regrow their tail. And when you look at where it breaks, how it breaks, why it breaks, and how it grows back, theoretically, as long as there's still fracture points along that vertebrae from the hips down where the tail is, they can keep regrowing. After that, they may not be able to break it off, and or if it breaks the cartilage area, there's no cells to stimulate regrowth. So that's pretty fascinating. So that's going to be it for today's 10-Minute Tuesday, even though we're coming in under 10 minutes, because right outside, they're starting some construction. I knew they were going to start, and I wanted to get this recorded beforehand. And as much as I love bobcats, these loud scooping bobcats are not the ones I love. So I'm going to wrap this up. Please, as always, if you have enjoyed any of the episodes, make sure you subscribe or follow, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on any of your podcast players. If you are so inclined, it would be a great favor to me if you were to leave a review, especially if you're watching or listening on Apple or anywhere that allows you to leave a review or a comment. Hit those stars, whatever it might be, because that helps other people who are looking for something new to watch or listen to go, hey, someone else like this, maybe I will too. All my links are down below as always. Again, I apologize for the choppiness and rough edges of this episode. I'm so tired. I was trying to beat the construction. I barely did. Oh, I can hear them. I wonder if the mic can hear it. Beep, beep, beep. Okay. I'm sorry. Now I'm just getting messy. You can get a hold of me at my website, zoologyrick.com. Also find me on most social media, zoologyrick. And all the links I talked about for the lizard tail adaptation, dropping and surviving, is going to be there also in those links. I don't know if I mentioned, though, not all lizards can do this. Did I mention that in this already? I'm so tired. I don't know. Not all lizards can do this. It depends on the species. I'll have information in the show notes as well for that. Okay, I'm tired. Coming up this Thursday, we do have a new episode, a guest that I interviewed a while ago. Great guy, fellow podcaster, fellow dyslexic. A lovely conversation. I think you're going to love it. All right, I'll see you guys then. Have a good one, everybody.